Somewhere right now, a website is inviting you to find out whether you share ancestors with Princess Diana, or with Albert Einstein, or Napoleon, or the boy king Tutankhamun, or Elvis Presley, or Genghis Khan himself. One testing company's marketing openly advertises that its database holds the DNA profiles of exactly those historical greats, and offers to tell you if you belong on the family tree. Another service goes further. It lets you compare your DNA against more than 250 profiles of royalty and world leaders, then prints you an official certificate of your famous match, suitable for framing so you can show it off. Marie Antoinette, Richard III, Thomas Jefferson, all waiting, apparently, in a tube of your spit. This is not a fringe operation. By 2022, the direct-to-consumer genetic testing market was worth around $3 billion, and the three largest companies together held the genetic data of nearly 50 million people. 50 million. That is the scale of the thing selling you a piece of a pharaoh. And here's the claim that should stop you cold. Of everything these tests can do, the promise that your saliva reveals a personal link to a specific famous name is the single thing they can least honestly sell. It is either trivially true for millions of people at the same instant, or it is manufactured outright. The famous ancestor is not the crown jewel of the industry, it is its weakest link. The people who do the real science know this better than anyone. When one company announced it had reconstructed the Y chromosome of King Tutankhamun and began inviting customers to discover if they descended from the pharaohs, the geneticist who had actually studied the mummies was blindsided. We will get to exactly what he said, because it is one of the most damning sentences in this entire story. For now, hold on to one idea. After the next 20 minutes, you will never read a headline that begins, "DNA reveals you're related to the same way again." Now, let's follow the arithmetic. And the best place to start is not with a pharaoh. It is with your own family tree. The spine of this whole industry is genetic genealogy, the business of reading your DNA to tell you where you come from and who you are related to. The familiar names, the ones you have seen advertised during football games, dominate it, and the growth has been staggering. A test that cost $999 in 2007 now costs around $79. And by 2024, a single one of these companies claimed that 14 million people had spit into its tubes. Cheap, viral, emotional, the perfect product. But before you can understand what these tests find, you have to understand a fact that almost nobody is told when they buy one. You do not have one family tree. You have two. The first is your genealogical tree. That is every ancestor who ever lived and led, child by child by child, down to you. The second is your genetic tree. That is the much smaller set of ancestors who actually left a trace in your DNA. Most people assume these are the same tree. They are not even close. And the gap between them is where every famous ancestor fantasy quietly falls apart. Follow the arithmetic, and the first crack appears the moment you simply start counting. You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. The number doubles every step back, and doubling is a monster. It does not walk, it sprints. Go back roughly 30 generations to about the high Middle Ages, and the arithmetic insists that you had more than 1 billion ancestors in that single generation. 30 generations back, 2 raised to the 30th power, comes out to more than 1 billion forebears. More than 1 billion. There were nowhere near that many people alive on the entire planet at the time. So the math has produced an impossibility, and there is only one way out of it. The same individuals must be filling many slots in your tree at once. Genealogists call this pedigree collapse, and it is not a footnote. It is the rule. It means your family tree is not a widening fan reaching back into an infinite crowd of strangers. It folds in on itself again and again until whole populations become your ancestors many times over. Everyone with deep roots in a region is, by simple necessity, sharing ancestors with everyone else there on a massive scale. Sit with what that already does to the sales pitch. If everyone with roots in a place is drenched in shared ancestry, then what exactly is a DNA test detecting when it hands you one famous name and a certificate? Hold that question, because the answer is stranger than the counting problem. The deeper trouble is not how many ancestors you have. It is how astonishingly few of them are actually inside your DNA. Here's the mechanism, and it is the heart of everything. You inherit half of each parent's DNA. That means half of each parent's DNA does not reach you at all. Push that back, and you receive, on average, only about a quarter of each grandparent's DNA. Keep going, and the shares keep shrinking until you cross a threshold that surprises almost everyone who learns it. After roughly 7 generations, you stop inheriting DNA from all of your ancestors and start inheriting it from only some of them in each generation, not less from each, none from most. Think of it like this. Picture your genome as a deck of cards. Every generation back, the deck gets shuffled and cut in half, and half the cards are thrown away for good. A few generations of that, and entire cards, entire ancestors, are simply gone from your hand. Not diminished, absent. You can be genuinely, provably descended from a person and hold not one single card of theirs. Their blood is in your genealogy, and none of their DNA is in your body, and this is not a slow trickle, it is a cliff. By 20 generations back, you have over 1 million genealogical ancestors, but only around 1,300 of them are genetic ancestors who actually contributed DNA to you. The geneticist Graham Coop of the University of California Davis calculated that you already carry genes from fewer than half of your forebears just 11 generations back. Fewer than half at 11 generations. 1 million ancestors, 1,300 of them in your cells at 20. Now bring that back to the famous name. Suppose you truly are descended from some celebrated figure 15 or 20 generations up. Follow the arithmetic, and the overwhelming likelihood is that you carry none of their DNA whatsoever, which means a DNA test cannot possibly detect that descent because there is nothing there to detect. The very thing being sold to you is, for most real famous ancestors, physically undetectable in the sample you mailed in. So how on earth does a company produce a match anyway? This is where the trick gets clever, and where the objection that seems to save the whole industry comes in. Because there is a kind of DNA that does survive intact down the generations, and it feels like a smoking gun. The Y chromosome passes from father to son almost unchanged, and mitochondrial DNA passes from mother to child the same way. These define what are called haplogroups, deep ancestral branches. And when a company tells you your haplogroup matches a famous person's, it can look like undeniable proof of a family link. It is not. And here is why. A haplogroup is not a family. It is a continent-sized branch shared by millions of people. Matching one means only that you and the famous figure share some very ancient common ancestor along one single line, together with a vast crowd of other humans. It is like being told you share a surname with a celebrity, in a world where 100 million people carry that surname. Take the strongest-looking cases head-on. One company assigned Napoleon Bonaparte to a haplogroup called EM34, then went looking for living men who matched it, and published the analysis in a research journal in 2011. Or consider the lineage attributed to the medieval Irish king Niall of the 9 hostages, which a genuinely striking share of men in Ireland are found to carry. At first glance, patterns like these seem to prove real personal descent from a legend.
but deeper analysis tells a different story every time. Sharing a broad branch is not sharing a name. Millions of men carry these lineages. They are not all the secret heirs of a king. They are cousins to each other across thousands of years, which is a very different and much less marketable thing. And when the famous person's DNA is not actually known, the industry does not stop. It invents. One company reconstructed a supposed Y chromosome profile for Tutankhamun from screen captures of a television documentary, claimed the pharaoh belonged to a haplogroup called R1b1a2, and started asking customers whether they were descendants of the pharaohs. The scientist who had actually analyzed the royal mummies, Karsten Pusch of the University of Tübingen, was never even consulted. His verdict on the company's claim was that it was, in his words, simply impossible. The Einstein match, many of these services trade on rests on similarly thin ground. A single unverified sample from someone claiming a paternal line to the family. And the punchline sits right at the top of this video. The confident internet factoid that the Wright brothers belong to a specific haplogroup is itself unsighted and contested, tagged in the genealogist's own reference wiki with a flag that means no source was ever provided. The brothers who taught humanity to fly have become one more manufactured match, floating unsourced across the web. It is the whole problem in miniature.
So if the match is a coincidence dressed up as destiny, the real question is not how they do it. It is why we want it so badly. And here is the part the certificate never mentions. Because of everything we have counted so far, the exponential doubling and the pedigree collapse, the famous ancestor is not rare. It is nearly guaranteed. The geneticist Adam Rutherford has pointed out that essentially everyone with European ancestry is directly descended from Charlemagne. Not many people. Literally everyone with that heritage. Genome studies by Peter Ralph and Graham Coop found that almost any two Europeans alive today share hundreds of common ancestors from more than 1,500 years ago. Read that again with the sales pitch in mind. You are related to European royalty is true. It is also completely worthless because it is true for almost everyone who could ever buy the test. The certificate on your wall is not describing something special about you. It is describing something universal about all of us and charging you for the privilege of feeling singled out, which raises the only question that really matters. If it is a universal fact, who profits from making it feel like a personal secret?
So, if nearly everyone is related to nearly everyone, why do we ache for one specific famous name? The hunger is old, far older than DNA. For most of recorded history, ancestry was power. Kings claimed descent from gods, nobles claimed descent from conquerors, and the whole architecture of who ruled whom was justified by a prestige family tree. To own a famous ancestor was to own a piece of legitimacy. That craving did not evaporate in the modern world. It got inherited, and then it got monetized. The genetic testing industry did not create the longing. It found it, already burning, and poured advertising on it. One company spent around $109 million on advertising in the United States in a single year, 2016, and the entire testing boom tracked, more than anything else, how much the companies were spending to advertise. The science did not drive the frenzy, the marketing did, and the scientists noticed. Researchers at University College London, David Balding, Debbie Kennett, and Mark Thomas, coined a phrase for the practice of selling scientific-sounding deep ancestry stories that are exaggerated or driven by a commercial motive. They called it genetic astrology. The campaign group Sense About Science warned that such histories are either so general as to be personally meaningless, or they are speculation from thin evidence. The geneticist Steve Jones put it most plainly of all. On a long trudge back through history, he noted, everyone very soon runs out of ancestors and has to start sharing them. That is the reframe. The famous ancestor was never a discovery waiting in your cells. It is a product engineered on top of an ancient human hunger for status and sold back to you as revelation, which sets up the deepest and strangest truth in all of this, the one that turns the entire industry inside out. Follow the arithmetic all the way to the bottom and you arrive at something almost unbelievable. In 2004, Douglas Rode, Steve Olson, and Joseph Chang published a study in the journal Nature, modeling the recent common ancestry of every living human. They found that the most recent common ancestor of everyone alive today lived only a few thousand years ago, not 100,000, a few thousand. And they found something even more startling just beyond that point. There is a moment in the past called the identical ancestors point, beyond which every single person then living either left no descendants at all or is an ancestor of every human being alive on Earth today. Everyone, without exception. For people of Western European descent, the models place a common ancestor as recently as around the year 1000. Let that dissolve what you were sold. There has never been a royal bloodline sealed away from the rest of us. There has never been a peasant line and a noble line running on separate tracks. There has never been a pharaoh whose descendants are a chosen few. If any of these people left descendants at all, they are in everyone's tree. The Wright brothers, Napoleon, Charlemagne, they sit in your family tree and in the tree of a stranger on the far side of the planet, right alongside everyone who ever planted a field or hauled a stone to build something that outlasted them. The famous Ancestor, the test, sells you as rare, and yours alone is, in fact, the most common thing about being a human being. It is the one inheritance every one of us actually shares. So let us say it plainly. A famous ancestor DNA match is a marketing artifact, not a biological discovery. The shared ancestry it gestures toward is real, but it is universal, and the personal, private DNA link it implies almost never exists at all.
But here is where honesty cuts both ways, because this does not mean the tests are worthless. That would be its own kind of overreach. Read carefully. These tests can tell you something real. A reputable service can give you a genuine, informative picture of the broad regions where your ancestors lived. It can connect you with close living relatives through cousin matching, cousins and half-siblings you never knew existed. That same technology has cracked cases once thought unsolvable, most famously helping investigators identify the Golden State Killer through a shared ancestry database. The machinery is powerful and often legitimate. The dishonest part is not the whole enterprise. It is one narrow, seductive claim bolted onto the front of it. Not, here is roughly where your people lived, but here is the famous name you secretly descend from. The first is science. The second is the certificate on the wall. So come back one last time to that certificate, to the tube of spit and the promise of a pharaoh. Picture it framed, hanging there, announcing that you are related to the Wright brothers, or to Napoleon, or to a queen. Follow the arithmetic, and the certificate does something no marketing department ever intended. It becomes true and meaningless in the very same breath. Yes, you are probably related to them. So is nearly everyone who could ever read that certificate. The document is not lying to you. It is just describing the ocean and charging you for a single drop. Because this was never really about famous people at all. Every number we counted, every branch that collapsed, every ancestor who vanished from your DNA while remaining in your tree, all of it was pointing at one quiet, staggering fact. The family tree of humanity is not a forest of separate trees. It is a single, impossibly tangled thing, and the identical ancestors point is the proof, written into the mathematics of descent itself. The stranger is your cousin. The pharaoh is your cousin. So is the person who mailed in the tube next to yours. A DNA test can tell you honestly where some of your DNA has traveled.
It can hand you a fragment of a very old, very shared story. What a famous name is worth on top of that, whether you buy the certificate or keep the arithmetic, is the one thing no laboratory can decide for you. That part was always yours.